Number one thing I recommend to everybody, and this is before manifestation, this is before everything, everything. The most basic thing you should ever do as a human being is to put yourself in the other person's shoe. So when you put yourself in the other person's shoe, you don't have to be there for a long time, but just try it. When you're in an argument and you're convinced that you're right, I'm not saying tell yourself you're wrong. That's not what I'm saying. However, put yourself in the other person's shoe. If you put yourself in the other person's shoe and you feel the way they feel, me as an empath, it was automatic. But I see some people are just tunnel vision and they don't see anything but their own viewpoint. And that's most of the people. So what do I say? I say put yourself in the other person's shoe, feel the way they feel, see the way they see. Try to come from their perspective. And once you do that, you're not only 180 anymore. You don't just see your side of the circle. You see the full side of the circle. And after you see the full side of the circle, you see everyone's perspective, and you understand, not only see, but understand everyone else's perspective, you're going to have a different reaction. You might think the same, but I promise you, you'll be more delicate, you'll be more considerate in your debate, in your argument, and you'll be more understanding. And for me, every time I've done that, I've changed my mind. Sometimes I met people, I'm like, oh my God, what's wrong with that? And then I look at their parents or their family, and I'm like, oh my God, I feel sorry for them. Oh my God, come here, let me hug you. Hug you. You're good, you're good. I'm so sorry. So sorry I judged you. So sorry you had to go through what you went through. And now I understand why you're like this. So 100% of the time, this has worked for me. And 100% of the time, this has worked for my clients. When I have couples come in, oh, it's his fault this happened. It's that fault she did this. It's his fault. Put yourself in the other person's shoe. And don't blame the other person. What would you do if you were in that person's shoe? How would you have reacted in this situation? And a lot of times, it's the exact same way that the other person reacts. So it doesn't take a long time to figure this out. However, it does take practice. To feel the pain of somebody else, to feel that distortion takes practice. But it's definitely worth it because, like I said, that's my top advice. Number one advice to anybody whatsoever. If you want this world to be a better place, start with understanding the person in front of you. Start understanding the person next to you. Start understanding the person behind you in line. Start understanding people around you. So like that, you can understand the entire circle and not just one half of it. Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. My name is Sarah and I'm a life coach here based out of Los Angeles, California, and I help people evolve to their fullest potential. So by helping people evolve to their fullest potential, what do I mean by that? What I've done is I'm translating a book, The Gene Key by Richard Rudd, which is a 64 gene key measurement tool where you get to see where you are on this evolutionary sequence. So you have 64 gene keys, you have 64 shadows, and through the shadow, the repressive nature, if you internalize it, the reactive nature, if you externalize it, you get to get out of the shadow level by hitting your gift level. By hitting the gift level, you eventually get out of that level by hitting the siddhi level. So on the last show, we talked about gene key number 3. So gene key number 3's shadow was chaos. If you internalized it, you manifest it physically by being stiff and having retention. And if you're reactive and expressive about it, it becomes disorder because now you're giving anger, you're shouting, you're becoming violent, you don't know how to express this anger, so you're just outwardly pouring it. So then you're creating chaos and disorder, and both of these, nature in the shadow, will give you the hint that this is not working for you and this is not the way to go. So by getting yourself out of the shadow level, you hit the level of innovation, because the only way you can get yourself out of from a chaotic lifestyle or a chaotic environment is if you innovate yourself out of it. So if you always do what you've done, you're always going to have what you've had. So if you want something different, you're going to have to try something different. And that means being innovative. So by being innovative, you get to play. You get to open up your mind. You get to experiment things. You get to think outside the box. You get to consider many different perspectives. So by doing that, eventually you hit the siddhi level of innocence. So why is it so important to go back to our innocence? Just like a child. A child comes out innocent. It's very motivated. It's full of imagination. It thinks it can be anything it wants. There's absolutely nothing obstructing the kid other than the outside influence and the programming environment that changes the child's point of view while growing up. However, at first, they're very innocent. So why are they saying that we have to go back to this innocent? Or no, we don't have to go back, but we're evolving towards this innocent. Because by being innocent, that's where you give room to creation. So if, let's say, your cup is full, your cup is full of childhood traumas or adult traumas, cup is full of trauma bonds, cup is full of resentment, full of revenge, it's very hard to be creative because you're just going to judge yourself. You're going to tell yourself this is not going to work. You're basically darkening your inside. You have to open up and be very pure, just like a child, so that the genius can come out without judgment. So when your canvas is clear, you can paint a brand new world. But if your canvas is filled with things you threw at it, and it's filled with images, you're not going to be able to build anything on top of your old images. You're going to have to get rid of everything, empty your cup, so that like that you can fill it up with what you desire, with what you want to create. And when you have a void, you can create something. But if you're filled up, it's going to be very hard to be creative. So that's why they say to go back to your innocence, to go back to being light, not be so serious. So like that, you can give room for new ideas to pop out without any attachment to any. And like that, you'll be able to raise yourself out of that frequency and go back to your innocence. And at that level, there's no more stress. Everything's fun. Everything can be solvable. There's solutions to everything. And you're not obstructed by the darkness anymore. So that was a really fun gene key to go through because now it gives you permission. It says if you go back to this level, you will hit your fullest potential for this particular gene key. So there's your permission to go play. There's your permission to be back, to be like a kid again. There's your permission to go back to your innocence. So like that, you can be whole and act out of your authenticity and not out of your programming. So the gene key number 4. Gene key number 4 is the shadow level intolerance. When the ancient Chinese named this 4th hexagram of the I Ching, they gave it the wonderful name youthful folly. And in doing so, they showed a profound understanding of its lower nature. The 4th shadow, the shadow of intolerance, is rooted in the mind's habit of becoming tangled up with human emotions. Intolerance is best understood through its relationship to its programming partner, the 49th shadow of reaction. So programming partners or your genetic code are in pairs. And sometimes they complement each other and sometimes they're prerequisites. So let's say you need a certain gene key to get activated with another gene key to get activated. So let's say the 3rd gene key can finally get activated. So these are prerequisites. Or you can have gene keys that complement each other. So that means when they're back to back, they cause a reaction. Because human beings are governed by their emotions, the general emotional state of humanity is unstable and chaotic. So again, on this gene key, global consciousness is at its shadow level. That activates, hey, let's get out of this shadow. And how do you get out of this shadow? By hitting the gift level. So let's aim towards that, all of us globally, so that we can help make this world a better place altogether. We tend to react to our whims instead of attuning to the quiet, clear guidance that lies within each of us. And reacting to our own and others' emotions, we decide that what we feel must be the truth and our mind agrees with us. So, why do they say that reaction is bad? Does that mean emotions bad? So you shouldn't listen to your emotions, you should ignore it and therefore not react based on that consequence? No, emotions are very important. Emotions are your guidance system. If you're triggered by something, that lets you know you got to look into this. Hypothetically, if somebody walks in and says, "Hey, Sarah, you got ugly hair. Ugh, your hair is ugly." I don't know, I think my hair is kind of nice. Although it's all over the place, I kind of like my hair. So I might get offended. But if somebody says, "Hey, Sarah, you'll never be an astronaut. Dream all your life. It's just never going to happen." Guess what? I'm afraid of heights. So who cares? I can be the worst. You know what? I'll probably be the worst astronaut ever. And I'm totally fine with it because I don't want to be an astronaut. So if somebody says, "Hey, you're the worst astronaut ever," I'll actually laugh at it. Why? Because that's my emotion telling me I don't care. But if I'm triggered by the insult, then it's like, "Hey, what if I know I have nice hair, then what do I care what this person says?" Let's say, right? But if I get triggered, then it's like, oh, maybe somebody when I was young said something about my hair, and then I should look into why when somebody talks about my hair, I get mad or upset. So that's why emotions are amazing. They're your GPS system. They let you know exactly what path you should take or why you are triggered the way you are. And that's where you should look into it. But that's why you shouldn't react. As a woman, I used to react, to a lot of things. I have brothers, sometimes they would instigate me, and then I would just get into the debate, right? And I noticed that, like, that's a huge waste of energy. They're instigating, they're doing it on purpose. They're doing it on purpose so I can get all riled up. And it worked. It used to work in my past. So that's why it's important not to react, because you don't know why the person is saying these things to you. Maybe they're having a bad day. And you fueling into that debate and participating in it isn't going to prove them wrong. They're just going to be stuck in their tunnel vision. They're not going to care and they're just going to keep at it, right? So you doing that isn't going to help. You reacting based on what's happening isn't going to help. The best thing is to quiet your mind, quiet your soul, and see, why is this emotion coming up? So just study it, contemplate it, try to look at it from different perspectives, and then sit with it. And if you do, you'll see that it's going to run its course. And then you're going to be able to act properly after that. But if you do it on the spot in the heat of the moment, then that's acting out of your shadow. The fourth shadow is essentially a misuse of one of the great gifts of the human mind, logic. The power of this fourth gene key is the power to read and solve logical patterns. And as we shall see in the case of the fourth gift, this ability leads you to a universal understanding of the rhythmic pattern and tendencies of all life. However, at a low frequency based on emotional reaction or overreaction, the shadow uses the power of distorted logic to support and uphold its volatile nature. In other words, if the fourth shadow has a bad day and decides it doesn't like someone, it will find a whole list of logical reasons to support this dislike. This is what intolerance really is, a slanted perspective of logic. At the shadow frequency, the mind is actually given the authority to make important life decisions. And this is often disastrous because its true role is not to decide anything. Its true role is to understand and communicate. So the brain's job isn't to make decisions. This is why sometimes you have a decision and you have the heart and brain non-coherence, right? The brain says, "Oh, it's fine doing this." And then the heart says, "No, no, 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 it's not good. Not good. Don't do it, don't do it, don't do it." And then sometimes, or most of the time, people just go with logic. Heart, you don't know what you're talking about. Brain says to do it, logic says do it, and then you go for it, right? So that's the problem. If it's simply intellectual and you make your decision 100% based on intellectual only, you're going to be biased. The best is to resonate heart, mind, solar plexus, your entire body, your gut, everything. Everything. Once it resonates, then you know you're sitting in your true authenticity and you can be more confident about your decision and then make that action. But if it's just the brain, it's just going to be logic based, and we all know that logic can be proven in any debate. I can, as a Canadian, as a previous Canadian, I can let you know a billion ways of why socialism, let's say, works best. Now that I live in the States, I can give you a billion reasons of why capitalism is best. And now that I've lived in both, I'll give you a trillion reasons why none of them work. So we have to come up with something that's going to be even better than these two. However, in the past, I was convinced that this system was the best, that system is now the best, and now none of the systems are the best. We need to come up with something that's even better than what we have. But it takes a while to get to that understanding. You have to go through the shadows first. At the shadow frequency, you identify absolutely with your emotional state, which defines the way you live your life. Any unresolved emotional pattern is taken up by your mind and built into a highly intricate logical framework that masquerades as the absolute truth. So as an example of this is certain people are on a trauma bond level. And trauma bond doesn't necessarily mean bonding with somebody on a traumatic level. It can be a trauma bond from, let's say, your childhood. You've had hypothetically a horrible childhood, and you're bringing that into your adult. Well, I've noticed that these people, because so many bad luck has happened to them, when the universe sends them a gift, a miracle, they'll be like, no, this is too good to be true. This cannot happen. So they're used to feeling a low frequency, and then when the universe gives them something, they go up in frequency, but then they panic instead of enjoying it and sitting in the bliss and be like, I want more of this feeling. Level Godard. I want more of this feeling. Let me sit and bask in this feeling. They don't do that. They immediately self-sabotage. This cannot be real. This is too good to be true. Something bad's going to happen now. Watch, watch, watch. This is not going to sustain. Well, guess what? By doing that, you just knocked out that opportunity. You went back to your low vibration, and the world is going to give you more than that because that's what you're asking. It's like, oh, you're basking in that vibration instead of the new vibration. No problem. Let me send you more of this bad luck. Because that's what you're asking. If you're sitting in a wonderful vibe and you're grateful and you're loving it and you're like, thank you for this miracle. I want more of this. I would love to feel this more. And you just sit and bask in that feeling. The universe will say, she's grateful. He's grateful. Let me send more miracles. But if they send you a miracle and you don't see it, the universe isn't going to waste their time. They're going to be like, they'll get out of it eventually. They'll learn. And whenever they don't want to sit in that level frequency anymore, they'll do something about it, and maybe then they'll see the miracle. But right now, they can't see it because of that trauma level, trauma frequency that they're used to, and then they're comfortable in that. It's what they know. It's what's familiar. Through the medium of the fourth shadow, opinions, judgments, and resentments are transmuted into conviction and certainties. In this way, people blind themselves with their own logic and can become deluded and sometimes dangerous. Intolerance is based on a subjective distortion of logic, which only measures those patterns that a person wants to see, rather than seeing all patterns from both sides of the argument. The power of the fourth gift of understanding is founded upon this ability to objectively assess all aspects of a viewpoint, thus avoiding a pitfall of taking sides. Number one thing I recommend to everybody, and this is before manifestation, this is before everything, the most basic thing you should ever do as a human being is to put yourself in the other person's shoe. So when you put yourself in the other person's shoe, you don't have to be there for a long time, but just try it. when you're in an argument and you're convinced that you're right, I'm not saying tell yourself you're wrong. That's not what I'm saying. However, put yourself in the other person's shoe. If you put yourself in the other person's shoe and you feel the way they feel, me as an empath, it was automatic. But I see some people are just tunnel vision and they don't see anything but their own viewpoint. And that's most of the people. So what do I say? I say put yourself in the other person's shoe, feel the way they feel, see the way they see. Try to come from their perspective. And once you do that, you're not only 180 anymore. You don't just see your side of the circle. You see the full side of the circle. And after you see the full side of the circle, you see everyone's perspective and you understand, not only see, but understand everyone else's perspective, you're going to have a different reaction. You might think the same, but I promise you, you'll be more delicate. You'll be more considerate in your debate, in your argument. And you'll be more understanding. And for me, every time I've done that, I've changed my mind. Sometimes I met people, I'm like, oh my God, what's wrong with that? And then I look at their parents or their family and I'm like, oh my God, I feel sorry for them. Oh my God, come here, let me hug you. Hug you. You're good, you're good. I'm so sorry. So sorry I judged you. I'm so sorry you had to go through what you went through. And now I understand why you're like this. So 100% of the time, this has worked for me. And 100% of the time, this has worked for my clients. When I have couples come in, oh, it's his fault this happened. It's that fault she did this. It's his fault. Put yourself in the other person's shoe. And don't blame the other person. What would you do if you were in that person's shoe? How would you have reacted in this situation? And a lot of times it's the exact same way that the other person reacts. So it doesn't take a long time to figure this out. However, it does take practice. To feel the pain of somebody else, to feel that distortion takes practice. But it's definitely worth it because, like I said, that's my top advice. Number one advice to anybody whatsoever. If you want this world to be a better place, start with understanding the person in front of you. Start understanding the person next to you. Start understanding the person behind you in line. Start understanding people around you. So like that, you can understand the entire circle and not just one half of it. The human logical mind is actually not designed to take sides. The essence of logic is its foundation upon objectivity. But in the hands of fear, objectivity dies, and logic becomes subjective even at the collective level. You may wonder how something can be both collective and subjective. Racism and prejudice are examples of genetic and ancestral fears that manifest through certain population groups. We then reinforce these fears through subjective logical argumentation. Only when science is skeptical of its own nature can it really be regarded as truly objective. The fourth shadow cannot help taking sides. The underlying nature of all the shadow states is fear. In the case of the fourth shadow, fear is projected onto others and then reinforced through taking a defensive, and sometimes offensive, mental position. This is how intolerance is created, and it is sometimes extremely subtle. Intolerance bases its position on opinion rather than fact. If you took the time to examine the other side of the argument, like I was saying, you would immediately understand that your opinion is rooted in a deep-seated emotional fear of something. So just like my, astronaut example, if you have to convince the other person, you have to think like me. Look into that. Why? Why do they have to think like you? Why does everybody in the world has to think like you? Look at that. I don't care if people think differently, even better if they do, because that gives room to creativity. So it's a good thing that people think different. It doesn't mean you have to agree, but you can let them think differently. You don't have to control their thoughts, you have to be exactly like me. It's okay. We'll get there. Eventually we'll get out of that. Most people choose one single side of an argument because it makes them feel a certain mental solidity. Ironically, however, mental assertiveness cannot make the body feel safe. The body can only feel safe when it surrenders to the moment. The fourth shadow is endlessly restless in its need to examine patterns and resolve questions. The role of this gene key is to understand, but understanding cannot come through the mind. Understanding has to be a mind, heart, gut coherence. When your full body understands it, and it literally comes from the inside of your soul, that's less bias than an understanding that comes purely from the mind, purely from your programming. Certain people believe certain things so much because their parents believe it. And when you're a child, all you want to do is impress your parents. All you want to do is impress your parents. Even if they're horrible parents, to you, they're like, they're your parents. You're always going to love them. You won't survive if it's not for them. And therefore, you're going to be programmed to love everything they say. Even let's say, God forbid, they beat you up. You'll be like, it's okay. I still love them. When you're a child. When you're a child, you're so dependent that there's nothing else you can do but to love your parents. So at that age, when they say, let's say, this ethnicity is horrible, they're horrible people, right? Which is horrible to say. Horrible. So what is the kid going to do? They're going to be like, I hate them too, because I want mommy and daddy to love me. And if mommy and daddy says those types of people are wrong, then I'm going to say those types of people are wrong because I want mommy and daddy to love me. You see? It's horrible. It's horrible. And that's what we need to fix. If mommy and daddy came from a certain environment and had certain experiences, that doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean 30 years later, you're going to have the exact same experiences with the exact same types of people or group of people at all. People change, generations change, and when you grow up, you see that everyone's at war with everybody. It's not, it's not like just one type of, like, there's wars everywhere. So the problem is not one ethnicity, it's pretty much all of them that find themselves as either the chosen one, or we're the best group genetically, we're the best culture, we have the best food, we have the best music. No, they all have the best music. They all have the best food. It's programming that comes down from your ancestors. And it's, tied in your genetics because ancestors is a very long lineage. It's not just your generation. So that's why the people that say, this is going to stop at me, they're wonderful people. It takes courage. They might get, shunned by their families. They might get kicked out from the family, but they'll still take side of what is right and what their understanding say and what resonates with their heart and not just intellectual. So again, if you just go based on the mind, you're going to be wrong. This is hypothetically like somebody that goes to school all their life and they're just very book smart. You can have 10 PhDs. I'll throw you here downtown LA and let's see if you're going to survive. Let's see if you're going to be able to make friends. Let's see if you're going to be able to influence people and get yourself somewhere amazing. You're not, because the PhD is not going to teach you that. PhD doesn't tell you how to really react to humans and of all kinds. Unless you're in psychology, but I'm just talking about book smart people that know a lot, that have a lot of intelligence. However, they're lacking the experience, they're lacking the empathy, the compassion, as those only come through time. Experiences only come through time. You can read all the books you want, but you need to experience and apply those theories. So like that, you can say, you know what? I read it in a book. I practiced it. I can tell you this theory works. That's way more solid than somebody say, well, I heard in the classroom that this is what it is. That could just be your teacher's opinion. It can be biased as well, and now you're just regurgitating what you've been taught without really processing, understanding, or contemplating. This is the essence of the fourth shadow's dilemma, and it keeps many people from realizing its gift. Understanding, as we shall see, only comes when you realize that your mind can never truly understand anything. Before you come to this huge inner realization, you will live your life under the influence of the fourth shadow and its persistent promise that it will one day arrive at an answer that brings you lasting peace. This is youthful folly, because only after much anguish and experience do you come to realize that there are no intellectual answers that bring about such peace. There are only two options for the fourth shadow. You either settle for a one-sided opinion and deny the other side, or you become lost in the fruitless quest to bring an end to the feeling of uncertainty that lies deep within you. Unless you make the leap into the true understanding of the fourth gift, you have no choice but to be caught in the eternal misunderstanding and intolerance. So, the repressive nature. The repressive nature of the shadow is apathetic. When the mental dynamism of the fourth gene key is frozen by the unconscious fear of a repressive nature, the result is an apathetic mind. An apathetic mind is a collapsed mind that is no longer bright or intelligent, but has given up on understanding anything and sunk into a kind of mental lethargy. These people believe themselves to be less intelligent than others, when in fact they are really paralyzed by the unconscious fear. Their fear is that they will have to assume responsibility for themselves, their decisions, and their actions. Instead, they choose to have no opinions about anything. Such people can pretend to be quite enlightened and very open, but there is a vital energy lacking inside of them. So that chi comes with time. We all have the energetic field. We all have these chakras. And within these chakras, we have the kundalini chi energy that goes up and down your spine. However, if you're, let's say, really closed-minded and you're resentful, your chakras aren't going to be open. They're going to be closed. So you can act a certain way, but the light inside you won't shine. You'll be just very, very dry, like my mom says. These people are dry. My mom loves, like the warm culture. And then when she sees somebody that with no energy, she's like, they're dry. So what she means by that is that the chi inside them is lacking. They can have great conversations, intellectual conversations, but you're gonna wanna go see somebody else, although what they're saying might be interesting. So it's very important to have that chi. That chi is what makes you powerful. It makes your aura contagious. It makes people know that you walked into a room without them necessarily looking at you at first. They'll just know somebody walked in, they'll turn around and be like, oh, who's that? I felt the energy. So chi is everything, but again, chi comes with opening your chakras up, but that takes time. Thus, they can have problems in motivation as well as with their health. To escape their apathy, they simply have to start thinking again, but without letting their thinking rule their lives. So the reactive nature is nitpicking. I find it funny because I used to be like that. In their reactive nature, thinking does rule a person's life. Their reactive nature projects out its internal need for answers to questions, and it does so in the belief that these answers will bring them a sense of security. When they discover that this is not so, they become angry and blame others. Often the person or system that they suppose would give them all the answers. These people cannot let go of their need for some feeling of resolution, so they make their minds the authority for bringing about this feeling, only to be endlessly disappointed. So I used to do that when, let's say, I wanted to see which system was the best. I would just nitpick everything out of it. But when you go into such detail, you don't see the macro. You only see the micro, the small little things. In certain fields, details are important. Let's say if you're in the makeup industry, like details are important. But when it comes to global understanding, just taking one detail isn't going to help. Nitpicking one section of an issue isn't going to help. Understanding many aspects that are connected to that issue, that are a cause and effect, or an influence, or somehow related. When you understand the entire global environment of that issue, then you can make a proper decision. These people hone in on the most irrelevant details, unconsciously looking for a vent for their frustration. When they find such a detail, it affords them the opportunity to criticize or complain and thus release some of their pent-up anger and tension. These people, above all, need to find a way to let go of the hope that their mind can ever bring them solace. When they do this, they can finally stop projecting their eternal disappointment onto others and begin to find a new awareness arising in them outside of their mind. So those are the people who are like, oh, it's your fault that I feel like this. It's the system's fault that I'm like this. It's the neighborhood's fault that I'm poor, let's say. You know what I mean? Yeah, you can always move out. There's so many solutions. But if you're just, that or externalize him, her, it, the school, the system, the government, You can blame everything in the world. It's not going to help. You're just venting and you're just throwing more anger and propagating more anger into the world. So eventually, you'll see that the repressive nature, apathetic, isn't working for you. The reactive nature, nitpicking, isn't working for you. Once you come to that realization, you have the gift of understanding. You finally understand. You don't just go with the knowledge, you actually use knowledge and emotional intelligence, not just intelligence. Now, if we're robots, for sure, make your brain your God. Have your brain control everything. Absolutely, if you're a robot. If this world was simply just mathematics and just robotic, you would fit right in. But we're not, we're humans. That's why intelligence is not enough. You also have to have emotional intelligence. Not just brain intelligence, emotional intelligence, understanding, grace, contemplation, consideration, many different perspectives, many different theories. Try it all. And once your emotional intelligence resonates with your intellectual mind, then you're going to have the mind body coherence, which is what Joe Dispenza talks about all the time. And when everything is in harmony, you'll have that deep understanding. That's where it's going to come from. And when you have a deep understanding, you don't need to prove anything to anybody. You understand that this is the way it is. And if they don't understand that, you're like, eventually they will. You don't need to brainwash them and be like, no, you got to think like me. So in the last video, I was talking about animal slaughtering. I'm not going to waste too much time on this, but just to bring out Jordan Peterson. I love Jordan Peterson. And Jordan Peterson only eats beef. He doesn't eat anything else. And the reason why he does this is because his daughter has like an immune system that doesn't tolerate anything else but beef. They can't cook it. They can't marinate it any other way. They have to cook it like with just salt and pepper. So because of this condition, he's eating meat all the time. And he looks great. He's healthy. He's thriving. And he's wonderful. So it's not a question of, don't eat meat, definitely eat plants. No, eat what's working for you. I'm just saying, if you're going to, let's say, eat meat, it's best that you raise your own animal. You raise your animal, you make sure they're happy, you make sure that, everything's okay, and then you eat them. And to me, that's totally fine. Like, go hunt your animal, Give the animal a chance to fight for itself, and if it loses, it loses. But what's happening in, let's say, those places that I mentioned in the last video, that's wrong. And I've spoken to people where I'm like, would you go and get rid of this animal just so you can eat it? And they're like, no, I could never do it. My heart says no. My brain says it's yummy. It's yummy and I can't and I want more of it. So again, it's not about which one's right. I'm not an activist. I used to be. But when I learned as I grew up that any diet can work for you as long as you have a high vibe. If you have a high vibe, you can even last on potatoes and milk, let's say. That's how the Irish tripled their population. Just with milk and potatoes. There's enough nutrients in those two that can triple a population. So imagine, you just eat that and you're not deficient in anything. Your body knows how to heal itself. Your body knows how to thrive in certain environments. And if you put in an environment where there's just a few things, your body's going to know what to do. Just like Jordan Peterson just eating beef. I'm like, where do you get your vitamin C? Yeah, I'm not too sure. But it's not for me to look into that. I'm not going to nitpick. Because my understanding says our body adapts to our environment. If you live in winter areas, you'll thrive on meat. If you live in 4 seasons or like me, just in summertime, it's constantly summer here, I love fruits and vegetables. That's what works for me. So your body will know what to do. Your body will know how to heal. So that's why, to me, there's no more activism. And I used to spend a lot of energy in activism, where now I'm like, you know what? Instead of doing that, instead of me fighting with people and holding these horrific things, horrific pictures for them to come out of restaurants and see and then want to puke their meal out. Instead of doing that, I rather talk about evolution so I can evolve people out of certain states. And once you have that evolution within you, you'll have the understanding. And maybe then you'll make the decisions on, you know what, let me go get my own animal. Let me go do this instead. And then you can make that decision from yourself, because the best decisions in life are the ones that come out of you. People can tell you what to do all day long. It's not going to work. People can recommend you all day long. It's still not going to work. But if you decide something, that's concrete, that's solid, that's going to work. So instead of preaching now, what do is I help people understand so they can come up with their own tools, their own ways, their own method of what resonates with them, because we're all different. We're all made differently, and that's what people have to understand. We all come from the same source, but we're all made differently. So you can't force down somebody's throat what you believe. It's just not going to work. The best thing to do is to have everyone understand and then make decisions through that understanding. The fourth gift of understanding. If you are someone with powerful intellectual capacities, the fourth gift represents a wonderful breath of fresh air for you. At the same time, it requires a huge quantum leap in your whole being. The gift of understanding has nothing whatsoever to do with knowledge. Knowledge is what your mind thinks it needs in order to take away its permanent feeling of unease. But knowledge can never bring a sense of peacefulness. At the most, it can give you the hope of that peace, although ironically, it is this very hope that sustains your intellectual quest and keeps you within the confines of the shadow frequency. Only true understanding can bring peace along with it, because true understanding lies outside the domain of the mind. Understanding is of the whole being, and it does not and cannot require agreement from the cognitive capacities within your brain. If you allow the fourth gene key to run its natural course without giving it responsibility to make decisions, it actually does something quite magical. It propels your awareness out of the mind. This quantum leap is true understanding, which is a feeling of knowing that floods your whole body and radiates from the solar plexus area. That's your gut. The gift of understanding is the only answer that will satisfy a person's dissatisfaction, and it must come about through the exhaustion of your mind rather than any other way. Nothing can ultimately be proved through logic, because logic can always be used to prove the opposite. When you finally see this, your whole being lightens, because you realize once and for all that the mind is of no use for resolving anything of real importance. This in turn releases the mind to do what it loves best: research and communicate and play. So that's the mind's job. It's to do the research, to get the information, to communicate, and to play. As you can see, decision making isn't in there. When the fourth gift is freed from having to solve your existence, it finally comes into its real genius, to play with the patterns of existence and arrange them in a new and original way. When you have the feeling of visceral understanding deep in your belly, your mind is no longer hampered by the need to defend your own viewpoint. In fact, you realize that all logical formula can be manipulated to prove or disprove anything. The higher frequency of such understanding also brings with the urge to be of service to the world. So when you understand, you rather help the world than to nitpick or to be apathetic. Let's say somebody is very rude to me, very rude. Well, I can be like, you know what? You're this, this, this. But if, let's say, I do a little bit more research, due to the fact that you took the time to look at this person's environment, to look at this person's past, to look at this person's habits, and understand, well, of course, they're going to be like this, of course. Again, if I put myself in their shoe, most likely I would react the same way. And therefore I understand now. Now I understand. I can't emphasize enough how contemplation, understanding will bring you towards grace. And that's what we want. We all want to be on a very graceful level, including myself. I'm a little sharp around the edge. However, I'm working towards being a graceful lady. or more graceful lady. This newfound genius at seeing the underlying patterns of life also affords you direct access into another aspect of the fourth gift, the ability to understand people. The programming partner of the fourth gift is the 49th gift of revolution, and this energy always accompanies true understanding. The very nature of understanding is to bring about improvement for society in general, since the dynamic energy within the fourth gift is still experienced as a certain restlessness. Whereas at the shadow level, this was restlessness to resolve your own insecurities. At the gift frequency, this becomes the restlessness to resolve the insecurities within a society in general. Thus, understanding always carries within it the seed intention to solve the problem of intolerance and division in the world. In the coming genetic shift triggered through the 55th gene key and the 49th gene key, the role of this fourth gift will undergo some very important genetic changes, which will gradually sweep through humanity. So once gift 55 activates, 49 activates, this gift is going to also activate. This involution of powerful siddhic energy from the highest aspect of this archetype will bring about a minor but extremely important genetic mutation in this fourth gene key and its associated amino acid valine. This mutation will essentially phase out the fourth shadow of intolerance. The children that come into the world carrying the new sequence of mutation will not be emotionally polarized. Their mental system will not run a riot throughout their lives. The fourth gift of understanding will govern the way in which their minds operate from birth. New formula will come into the world through this fourth gift that will undoubtedly lead to technological breakthroughs that solve long-standing problems rather than create new ones. So where does this understanding lead us? So you come out of the shadow, you're apathetic if you're internalizing it. If you're reactive to it and externalizing it, you become nitpicker, nitpick out of everything. Once you see those don't work for you, you eventually get out of the level, the shadow level, by hitting the gift level, which is understanding. You get out of the intellectual side and you consider everything. And then you understand it. You understand it deep in your soul. So after doing that for a while, you hit the siddhi level. And the siddhi level for gene key number 4 is forgiveness. Not only will the coming shift bring about a social revolution, but it will also bring an end to one of the greatest searches of modern men, the search for knowledge. Through this rupture of the fourth shadow, understanding will take the place of knowledge, and much of the thrust of our modern world will die down. We will no longer need to logically make sense of the paradoxes of existence because our new center of awareness will give us a physical and energetic understanding of existence. So we're not going to have to look for, knowledge anymore. We'll just understand it. And with time, if you're on your spiritual path, you're going to see, with time, you're going to have some gifts. You're going to be able to read people. You're going to be able, I can tell right off the bat when someone lies to me. When they lie to me, I just know. Body language, the energy shifts, the eyes look somewhere else. I wasn't able to catch that when I was young. You would be able to lie to me day in and day out, and I would have believed you. I was so naive. I thought everyone was nice, and everybody wanted to be my friend, and everyone was just, generous. Until I got into the real world, and I was like, this is not the case. So what happens in that sense, when you have true understanding, it's like clairvoyance. And again, this comes with spiritual work. You got to kind of disconnect yourself from 3D reality in order to be able to tap into these extrasensory senses, So I can tell if somebody lies to me right off the bat. And I don't know how. I'll just know. And they'll be like, prove it to me. And I'm like, I can't. I can't prove it to you. But I know you're lying to me. I just know. So, but again, this has to be in person. That's why I don't do any life coaching over the phone. I'll do video, but I'm not doing this over the phone. Because you can lie to me all day over the phone. I'm not going to know. There's no way I can read energy over the phone. People are just such great actors, especially here in Hollywood. Great actors. But in person, impossible. You can try all day. I'll know. So this is the same thing. Once you have that deep understanding, you're not going to look for knowledge anymore. You're going to know. And once you know, then you know. It will no longer be used to defend our prejudice and fears, and it will no longer be used for purely personal benefit. Logic, at its highest frequency, is a means to orchestrate the most efficient society possible. True efficiency is based upon a higher holistic understanding of the living system. Once our understanding shows us how connected we all are to each other, we will see for ourselves that selfishness is the most inefficient frequency of all. Selfishness is the most inefficient frequency of all. So fear is the worst, and selfishness is the most inefficient. The fourth gift forms the launch pad for an even more refined frequency, the siddhi of forgiveness. And we all know forgiveness can be hard. Forgiveness can be very hard. Some people are just not willing to forgive until they die. They want to take it to their grave. And it is what it is. But that's why forgiveness is at the siddhi level. When you learn that resentment, you're holding a grudge. I know some people that hold grudges towards dead people. It's like the person's dead. Oh, but they still did this to me. This person, this insult, that insult. Imagine that bad energy within you, and the person's dead. They're gone. But you still hold that resentment. It's one thing if they're alive, because then you can be like, oh, that person can pop back into my life and do this again. I'm not saying that's fine. I'm not. I highly don't recommend to think like that. But I understand it because I'm like, oh yeah, it's true. That person can bump into, back into your life, and you might have that anxiety. But if the person's dead, well, I don't know. That's just you. That's 100% you holding resentment and holding poison within yourself. And there's this experiment, the thoughts on water. You know how we're made 80% of water. This experiment shows exactly. They did a jar of water that they turned into ice. And what they would do is they would talk to it. They would say love. And then they would turn it into ice, and it would turn into a snowflake. And that word would just show you this beautiful star, and it's very symmetrical, and it's beautiful, and it looks like love. And then they would take another jar, and they would, either play heavy metal or like just put wrong words or bad words or negative words towards it. And then you would see that snowflake would be like, it would be like yellow. And they did that experiment on rice as well. And the one rice gotten rotten, the one that they talked back to, and the rice that was in water, that they were just give it love and compassion, turned out beautiful. So that experiment just shows you what your thoughts do to yourself. And if you're 80% water, and you're in agony like that, well, your inside is going to be, yellow. It's going to be crushed. It's going to be yellow. It's not going to be symmetrical. It's not going to be high vibe. It's not going to be beautiful, geometric. It's not. So the same thing I highly recommend, if you can forgive somebody, put yourself in their shoe and try to forgive them. Oh my God, that's gonna open so much space in your heart. And that space that you opened in your heart, you can open it up to someone that's alive. That's someone that's in your life every day. And then you can be more grateful towards them. But if you hold all these resentment towards your past, you're going to have a hard time looking at the present moment. And if you have a hard time looking at the present moment, then you're not living in the present. You're living either in the past or in the future. And we all know that's anxiety and that's stress. Because you're living in an illusion. The past is the past and the future hasn't happened. So you're in an illusionary mind. And I've been like this where I've just, been like a whole month in my brain. I haven't been manifesting anything because I'm just stuck in my thoughts. You got to come out of the thought form and into your heart. Forgiveness is born out of understanding, but it occurs when a being makes a leap beyond understanding. Forgiveness is a stage further on from social revolution. Just because a person has understanding and good intention doesn't mean that they can orchestrate a perfect society. Society is a living thing. So just your intentions, your good intentions, and your intelligence isn't going to be able to manage an entire society. For that, you need understanding. You need to be in other people's shoes and see what they want or what they expect, what is necessary for protection, what is necessary for education. A society is a living thing that constantly changes. So pure intelligence and pure intention isn't going to be enough. It's needed, definitely needed, but it's not enough. History has shown that revolutions never change the world. They just change society, and usually only briefly. Forgiveness, however, is a pure citic state, and as such, it has no sense of restlessness at all. All citic states are the end of the line. They represent the absolute transcendence of our genetics and the end of being human. So we're not saying don't be human. Definitely, but be a superhuman. That's way better. It's like Nietzsche. Nietzsche said it. The Uberman. Become the Uberman. Don't become just a man. Don't become a beast. But become the Uberman. Become a superhuman being. And if you hit all 64 siddhi level of this tool that I'm showing you, you will become the Uberman. You will become a superhuman. Especially in the eyes of average people. Definitely. And that's what a sage is. A sage is somebody who's worked so much on themselves that they're at this level. And for Richard Redd to write this book, guess what? He has hit all 64 siddhi levels, and he was able to show us how to also do it. And I am here to also show you. I am far from the siddhi level. I am not saying that I am at this level and I'm showing you how to get to it. Absolutely not. I am transcending at the same time as everybody else. I have my triggers, I have my issues, and I've been on my spiritual path for 15 years. Since the age of 25. At 24, I had everything, and I was miserable. So at 25, I decided to move to a new country and just make it on my own and figure it out on my own. And that was the best thing I ever did. And that's 15 years ago. And 15 years later, I'm still working on myself. I'm sure I'm going to work on myself until I die. We have so much ancestry things and so much emotions, and society changes all the time, and it's hard to catch up and always be angelic. That's why I'm trying to become more graceful, because once I hit the grace level, then it pretty much means that I've hit most of these siddhi levels. So again, I'm far from this. I'm not saying be like me. I'm saying be like this. Forgiveness is the thunderbolt that is released when a being attains Christ's consciousness. Forgiveness allows the truth behind all forms to be seen. It is a defined quality that descends like Christ into the world of form. So forgiveness comes from above. Forgiveness comes from the heavens. That's why it takes time for it to come down and hit you here in the world of form so that you can practice this. However, it's a reflection. As above, so below. In descending into human form, forgiveness lays its hand upon all humanity and works its way back through time, burrowing into our collective past, releasing and freeing energy that has lain trapped and stagnant for eons. Forgiveness moves down the ancestral bloodlines of all humanity in this way, dissolving genetic blocks and lifting karmic curses wherever it travels. This is why the siddhi of forgiveness is often credited with being capable of inducing miracles, because it can release a karmic debt that has stagnated for generations. As such debts are released, those in whom they live can move through incredible transmutations. Transmute yourself into the Uberman. Okay, I'm going to stop with that. I'm sorry, I love Nietzsche. The fourth siddhi is a primary agent of divine grace. It concerns the resolution of old debts at all levels. At a purely individual level, the whole process of human incarnation is based around the notion of karmic debt. Until you have paid off all your debts, particularly through your relationships, you cannot escape the game of incarnation and reincarnation. So I personally believe in reincarnation, but you don't have to. Like when I went to Vipassana in Massachusetts. That's where you lock yourself in for like 10 days and you just meditate with, not monks, but volunteers that help you get to that level of meditation. And what's incredible about Vipassana is that the first day you're enjoying it. You're like, oh, this can be like a retreat. But you can't talk and you can't do eye contact with anybody. You're supposed to meditate from like 4 in the morning. There's a dawn. And then you wake up, no makeup, no phone. You don't have anything. You're not allowed to bring anything in. And because you're supposed to meditate individually, well, they can't really open a Vipassana for like every single person, right? So what they do is they put you in a room with 30 other people, but you're not supposed to look at them and you're not supposed to talk to them. You're just supposed to look down and do your own thing and meditate. The first few days, you get triggered. You get triggered all kinds. It's a breakdown of personality. After that, you're like, you know what? This is a cult. You're like, I got to get out of here. But you sign something that you can't get out, which is great because the volunteers are doing this for free and it's on donation base. Vipassana is donation base. So there, you put yourself on a waiting list, and I highly recommend people to do this because this is wonderful if you want to like reprogram yourself. I wanted to undo everything society had done to me so I can start a clean slate. So third day, you're starting to think you're delusional. You're like, oh my God, why did I sign up for this? This is not for me. This is for crazy people. I'm not crazy. And then you try to rationalize things. Then the fourth, fifth day, you cry and just empty yourself because you're like in a dark room. What else are you gonna do? You empty yourself. Towards like the seventh day, I was like starting to feel light. And after a while, you just get used to it. Like you're in there. There's nothing you can do, and they feed you. And there's like a shower room. So it's not like you're in a bad place. It's a beautiful place. It's very zen. And then the last day, they help you reintegrate. The last day is the only day where you're allowed to talk to people. And you'll see, like, you're not even going to want to talk to people. You've been so used to being in your own world that, talking to people is a little bit hard. Coming out and getting a bus, to me, that was a little hard. But you reintegrate yourself back into society. So why am I saying this? I'm saying this because incarnation and reincarnation, the world is a school. The planet Earth is a school. Now, you don't have to believe this, but it is. But again, you don't have to believe this. But one thing you should believe is energy never dies. Tesla said it. You probably have felt it yourself. When you gave bad karma to somebody else, it came back tenfold. Energy doesn't die. So when, let's say, you give bad energy to a human being and then you don't see them anymore, don't tell yourself, that was close. It's going to come back. It's going to come back in your next lifetime. You're going to have to resolve that. You can't move into higher realms if you have issues with people. You should apologize. You should say, I'm sorry if I made you feel this way. And then if they don't forgive you, they don't forgive you. But you've done your job and you've expressed yourself. And we're all humans. And I can't emphasize that we change every day. So you could have done something horrible. But if today you realize that was horrible and you'll never do that again, to me, you're awesome in my book. Absolutely. I will never bring back the past. Because you've learned your lesson. And this is the same concept. Dolores Cannon said that, the planet's a school. And I believe it because every time I did exams, my teachers weren't around to help. I never knew the answers. I couldn't figure it out. I had to learn my way out of it. And same thing with the planet. There's no one to tell you what's concrete, what your true purpose is, why we're here. You need to figure it out for yourself. And that's why I believe it's school. But again, my opinion, I'm not going to force it onto anyone. So it's up to you if you don't want to believe in incarnation. If you think after we die, we go into the ground and that's it, you sure can believe in that. Absolutely. I'm not here to stop you. So again, I'm not here to, preach religion at all. The fourth siddhi's ultimate role is to bring humanity into a collective union through the resolution of karmic debt, individually, racially, and mythically. In the material realm, we will see this manifesting one day through nations forgiving each other their financial debt. And that's going to be beautiful. Because it's ridiculous, right? We're just printing money. So if we're just printing money then, it's not backed by anything. Why don't you just print more and pay off your debt? I don't know. Just an advice. As more beings bring the siddhi into the world, they play their part in the releasing of humanity's collective karma.
Such beings hold on to nothing in life because they have moved beyond understanding into pure truth.
So the more people are understanding, the more people, get rid of their resentment, their shadows, and they're at the I understand everybody level. The more this world will know peace. There'll be no more wars. There'll be no more deaths. There'll be no more famine because we all know this planet is abundant. There'll no more be any selfishness. This fourth siddhi, pure forgiveness, is the final answer to all questions. And when the first atoms of forgiveness finally travel back to the very beginning of time, as they already have, the world we know will begin to dissolve. When all is forgiven, then forgiveness itself no longer exists, only truth. The final destiny of this fourth siddhi is to rupture the connection between the past and the future, between the black and the white, between the yin and the yang, to finally bring an end to the logical fabric of space-time itself. So what a beautiful gene key. And I can't wait for everyone to get at the siddhi level because again, this is evolution. That's where we're going. Now, I'm not saying every single person is going towards this, but as humanity as a whole, when you look fast forward in time, the ones that will survive are going to evolve. And the new ones that are going to be born, they're going to be born with this new mutation. And it makes sense because I'm not trying to give my age because that's secret. But when I was born, we didn't have computers. We didn't even have internet. I had a laptop when I started college and we weren't allowed to bring it to class. Like you had to write the notes. Now it's like everyone brings their laptop and you just put the recorder and they don't, you don't have to write anything down, which is mind blowing because when I had to go to school, I had to write as fast as the teacher would speak. There would be no notes other than that. If you miss a class, well, guess what? You miss an entire chapter. And you got to figure out on your own. And there was no internet for me to be like, oh, can somebody give me their notes? I physically had to go see someone and be like, hey, I missed last class. Can you give me your notes? And, they'd be like, she ditched class and I got to give you my hard work. Like, it was just awkward. But now there's computers everywhere. Information at your fingertips. In my time, when I was growing up, if you hated something, well, you hated something. You had to go to the library to find out why you hate it or why you should not hate it. And in the library, everything was manual. You had to go to the ABC section, then go find the book, and then read the book, and then be like, this is not it. Let me go start all over again. But the new generation, they have internet, gadgets, information at their fingertips. When you have that type of information, then programming from your ancestors isn't that easy. Because now if mom and dad says, hey, this kind of person is horrible, and then you go to the internet, you're like, well, this kind of person's culture did all of this, Ma. Why? Why do you think like that, Dad? Right? You can prove them wrong within a second. But me growing up, I couldn't prove anybody wrong. I had to do research and like physical research, bring like 30 books, half of them weren't relevant. This would take me days to come up with something. Now you're like, hey, no, you're wrong. Look, Wikipedia says this. Wrong year or wrong whatever, right off the bat. So after this generation, imagine the next generation. They'll have even more access to knowledge and information, and they're going to have a greater understanding as a result, a faster understanding. So, have kids. Have as many kids as possible because they're going to be like these indigo children that's going to take the planet into a different direction. The final destiny of this fourth siddhi is to rupture the connection between the past and the future, between the black and the white, and between the yin and the yang. I'm sorry, I had to say it again because I just can't wait for this to happen. So, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this is gene key. Next episode, we're going to talk about gene key number 5, and let's see how I can continue doing all 64 of this. It might take me 2 years, but we'll see. Yeah, I don't know. For me, this is fun. This is crucial information, as important as any other books out there. And I really, really want people to see where humanity is going, because if we have that visual and that tool, we can apply it instead of just evolving blindly. we'll have the understanding of where we're going. And that's going to help everybody. So again, thank you very much. God bless every single one of you. And see you on the next show. Ciao.